Hi guys, I'm doing chapter 10 for the second section of Kite Runner. Chapter 10 is set 5 years later after chapter 9, and it's now March 1981. The chapter opens up with a couple holding an infant and comforting that infant in their arms, praying to their God while they're in a transfer truck. At this point, I assumed that the war is fairly serious now and it's really starting up because those in the truck, Amir and Baba included, are in a human smuggling vehicle. The driver, Karim, drives the people from the Shawari-occupied Kabul to safer regions like Pakistan. He was talking to Amir and Baba and has plans of transferring the two of them to a bigger truck once they arrive in Jalalabad. And Karim's brother Toor is planning on driving them across the Khyber Pass into Peshawar, which I believe is their desired destination. The narrative goes back to before they entered the truck when they were packing up at their house, and Amir recalls that since Hassan and Ali's departure, they've gone through 7 servants, and I think that this really showed that they couldn't trust anyone after the two of them had left, and that especially now since the war has begun, it's sort of like an eye for an eye. Everyone betrays everyone and you can't trust anyone anymore because you don't know who will tell the Shawari, the enemy, information about, the day-to-day people, if that makes sense. And so when they left the house, they left it in a state of disarray. It was almost like if you were to look inside the house, you'd think, oh, they just forgot to clean and they're not leaving forever, they're just going out for a walk or something. When really, they are leaving forever. And they didn't even tell their current servant about their departure, simply because they can't trust him or anybody. And their narrative goes back to when they're in the transfer truck, and Amir begins to feel nauseous, and they stop the truck, and Amir throws up over the side. He gets out of the truck, he looks up in the stars, and he contemplates life and how his life has gotten to this point in time, whereas before he was a rich kid in a well-to-do neighborhood. His father was very influential and praised, and now he's surrounded by stenches of feces, vomit, and pure despair. He gets back in the truck, and 20 minutes later, the truck arrives at a checkpoint, and Karim talks with a Russian soldier and an Afghan soldier at the checkpoint. The Russian soldier says that they can all pass, but on one condition. Only if the lady that was mentioned in the beginning of the chapter with the infant, only if the lady gives herself up for an hour and a half in the back of the truck. To this, the husband protests, and the Russian soldier just says, every price has a tax, which is pretty true. So Baba stands up, and what the soldier said just did not sit well with Baba. And he tries to be a hero. He tells Karim to tell the soldier where his shame is. And Baba provokes the soldier further and says that he would take 1,000 bullets before he'd let this indecency take place. And to this, the soldier just laughs. He just says, I feel like I definitely enjoy putting bullets in your head, either equally or even more than I'd enjoy taking advantage of this lady. And Amir's mind flashes back to the graphic scene of Asif raping Hassan with Kamal and Wali holding him down. And Amir thinks, some hero I had been, fretting about the kite. Sometimes I wonder if I'm really Baba's son. And he says this because he not resents, but he dislikes the fact that Baba's trying to be a hero in such a dangerous situation, because he thinks, okay, if he tries to be a hero and it ends up becoming fatal, then Amir's going to be left with no one, just himself. And the fact that Baba's not thinking of that really strikes a chord with Amir. But because Amir feels that way about what Baba's doing, he also thinks, I'm truly a coward. I'm truly so unlike Baba, because I can't even commend him for trying to be a hero in a situation like this, because I'm too scared to lose him, or to lose anybody again. And so Baba is about to get shot by the Russian soldier, and Amir closes his eyes. But there is a gunshot, but it didn't hit Baba. What happens is that a second Russian soldier hears what's going on, and he fires a warning shot to the reckless soldier. He apologizes for what that reckless soldier was planning on doing and allows them to pass. So they finally arrive in Jalalabad, and they enter a barren room. Karim brings bad news and says that Toor's truck engine blew last week, and they're still waiting for parts. And at this, Baba is enraged because Karim still brought them here, despite knowing that Toor's problem is something that has been going on for a week, 2 weeks, in fact. And Baba ends up choking Karim off the floor until that same lady from earlier pleads with him to stop. And the group that was in this transfer truck ends up discovering that there's others in the basement that have been waiting for 2 whole weeks. And it's revealed that Karim lied. So they're now inside the basement with the other people, and Amir observes that there's 30 refugees shoulder to shoulder in the stank air of mildew, feces, and vomit. So it's now nighttime, and on the first night, all the men gathered to pray. And one of the men asks Baba why he wasn't praying with them. Baba responds, what'll save us is 8 cylinders and a good carbonator, not praying to God, because God can't save us. And that ends up shutting everyone up, and after that, no one talks about God or mentions it to Baba. Later that night, Amir discovers 2 other people in the basement, and those 2 people are Kamal and Kamal's father. Amir notices that compared to those years before, Kamal has withered. It's like he's not even human anymore. His body, his skin is just sagging, almost like, quote, his bones were just too tired to cling to the skin, end quote. And Kamal's father ends up telling Baba that his wife, Kamal's father's wife, and Kamal's mother was killed by a stray bullet that ended up hitting her in the temple, killing her instantly. Kamal's father also tells Baba that Amir was sent alone somewhere one day, and 4 people cornered him. Kamal tried to fight them off, but he ended up getting gang raped, which kind of explains why Kamal looks the way he does, and the fact that he didn't even recognize Amir when he saw him. His eyes just had this hollow look to him, almost like his soul was ripped out of him. And in a way I thought, okay, cool, so he got a taste of his own medicine, considering what he let happen to his son. But at the same time, it's not like he committed the act of rape. That was Asef that did that. Kamal actually refused to. So I do feel a little pity for him, But it does make sense why Kamal is so affected. He's actually mute and he just stares at nothing. He refuses to talk. And that's not just because I feel because his mother died or that he was gang raped, but also because he now knows how it feels, and he knows that he lived his life letting someone live with that same feeling of getting raped. So, fast forward, and after a week in the stank, rat-infested basement, Karim tells them that the truck is beyond repair, and that the only other option was for them to hide in a fuel tank, a fuel truck, and they all decide to go except for an elderly couple. So, before departing into the fuel truck, Baba empties his snuff box. Snuff is, I believe, sort of like tobacco, so he empties his tobacco box, and fills it with dirt. But before he pours the dirt in the box, he kisses the dirt on the ground. He fills then the box with dirt, and he stows the box in his breast pocket next to his heart. So I think this shows that even though Baba doesn't believe in a higher God or some sort of heavenly entity, he still believes in what's real. And he knows that if he takes the right precautions, perhaps he can save himself and other people from getting hurt or killed, which is why he put it in his near his heart, so that, let's say, if he gets shot, that dirt will act as a little barrier, so that maybe he won't get killed instantly or he won't get killed at all. So I think this just continues to show the fact that Baba is a realist, and although he is cynical and doesn't believe in any of that stuff, he does have common sense and logic, and he does understand self-preservation, even if it's not him believing in a religion. So now, at this point, the paragraph that follows is really hectic. There's a lot of, capitalized words, and this just shows that Amir is really panicking. Amir's lungs are in survival mode as he breathes through a singular drinking straw. And he says that he wants to scream, but, quote, "You have to breathe to scream," end quote. And he can't even breathe. He can barely breathe. So how can you scream if you can't breathe? How can you just express agony if you don't even have the strength or the energy to do that? And Amir describes the air around him as thick, almost solid. He mentions that he wants to just grab the air and stuff it down his throat. And this imagery and more imagery that follows, I feel, really captures the whole picture and just their situation right now in this chapter. And he also mentions the stench of gasoline stinging his eyes due to the fumes that it's emitting. And right when he was about to lose it, Baba tugs him on his shoulder and tells him to look at his watch. And Baba's watch has a green fluorescent light that's able to gradually help Amir become aware of his surroundings. So now Amir sees people and hears people praying, vomiting, cursing to the enemy, the Shaori, and soothing babies' cries and stuff like that. So now Baba whispers to Amir, saying, "Think of something good. Think of something happy." And Amir thinks back to the past. He thinks back to a Friday afternoon in Paghman on an open field of grass and mulberry trees. He thinks back on that Friday to when he and Hassan were flying kites in contented silence. And he mentions that they're able to have this comfortable silence because of the strong bond that they have. They fed from each other's breasts, and people who fed, not each other's breasts, sorry, and people who have fed from the same breast, from a wet nurse, have this sort of connection that just truly cannot be broken. So he thinks this, and he also hears in his memory a nostalgic tune that plays as someone calls Amir and his son and says that it's time for tea and cake. And that memory ends, and they finally arrive in Pakistan. And Karim says that he's going to call a bus to take the two of them to Peshawar. So Amir finally looks around at his surroundings, and he notices Baba's suitcase. And this really saddens him. It saddens him to think that Baba's life has been accumulated into 2 suitcases and himself, a disappointing son. And so that thought is disrupted when the two of them hear someone screaming, wailing, in fact. And Baba and Amir push through the onlookers to see Kamal limp in his father's arms. His face is ashen, and his body is just completely dead, basically. So, blind with grief and rage for what Karim made everyone go through, Kamal's father lunges at Karim, grabs Karim's gun, and shoots himself in the mouth with the barrel of the gun. And again, I want to add that the reason why Kamal is just blind with grief and rage is because the reason why Kamal's father is blind with grief and rage is that if Kamal hadn't got into that truck, if Karim hadn't lied about the truck not being ready, they wouldn't have done what they did, which was go into that fuel truck. Because it was the fumes that killed Kamal. He was too weak to endure the long hours of going to their destination under such harsh conditions. And so Amir claims that he'll never forget the, quote, echo of the blast or the flash of light and the spray of red, end quote. And the chapter ends with Amir doubling over and dry heaving on the side of the road. And yeah, that's it. Sorry for the depressing chapter.